Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Stupid for the 13th of November 2016. This week is going to be an important week's episode, and a lot of people have been telling me they've been waiting for this one. And I don't fucking blame them, because this is just incredible what has happened in the last week. It's amazing, and I think it's going to spell the end of social justice, which is a damn good thing. Let's begin. It's hard to overstate the magnitude of the loss that the Democrats have suffered. Not only have they lost the presidency, the most powerful office, they have lost control of the Senate and the Congress as well. And as I understand it, the president gets to choose any Supreme Court nominees. So what this means is that the Democrats, the left, has lost all institutional control in the United States. Not only were they defeated, but they were utterly routed. The culture wars are over for the left. We have lost. The Republicans have won. They are going to, for at least the next 4 years, be the ones forming and shaping the West. And I have no doubt there are going to be many naysaying SJW twats who will say, well, you would say that. You say everything's social justice. No, I say the things that are the consequences of social justice are the consequences of social justice, and this is one of those consequences. And I will fucking explain it to you twats, step by fucking step, until at the end of it, you will be denying reality, you fucking ideologues. So prepare to get fucked. I was right, you were wrong, you can shove this up your fucking arseholes. You've handed the West to the right wing, like I've been predicting for years. So shut up and fucking listen. The Democratic Party is descending into a civil war after Clinton's loss, which is precisely what happened to the Labour Party after they lost to the Conservatives in the last general election in Britain. This is a predictable pattern, and I'll tell you exactly what will fucking happen. They've interviewed the fat brown buffalo himself. There is no question there is a civil war taking place inside the Democratic Party, and the progressive side is going to win. Which is weird, because the progressive side is one of the main contributing factors to the defeat of the Democratic Party. It's so obvious, I can't believe they can't see it. Yuga told Business Insider, which is amazing because I think this is so obvious, I can't believe Cenk can't see it. But he says the Democrats have become the establishment party and people hate the establishment. No, they only hate the establishment when the establishment is working against them. For example, look at Vladimir Putin's popularity ratings, you cuck. He's fucking popular because he's not working against the Russian people. We are going to rip you down, he warned. I have no use for them. I don't know what to tell them other than we are going to beat them. I don't want their help. I know what their incentives are. They want money. Almost everything else is a trick. Yes, I agree. The neocons within the Democrat Party are just fucking warmongering, money-grabbing hawks. They need to go. But you are a facilitator for warmongering, money-grabbing hawks. You also have to go. But instead of accepting this, you say, having said that, the empire will strike back, adding that progressives were more than ready for what he called the long war ahead, which is what is going on in the Labour Party at the moment. Progressive ideologues are going to do to the Democratic Party what progressive ideologues in Britain have done to the Labour Party. They are going to turn it into an ideological purity test. What we're going to talk about now is how progressive liberals have lost contact with reality. This retreat into their ideological echo chambers has given them some bizarre perspectives and made them bedfellows with some strange people, such as The Independent, a very progressive and left-leaning paper publishing neocon propaganda. In Donald Trump's agenda signals the end of America as a world superpower. Just that is so unfathomably out of touch with actual observable empirical reality. It's amazing that anyone would have the gall to print such a thing. They begin with a statement by Vladimir Putin, who is accurately representing reality. He says, America is a great power. Today, the only superpower, we accept that. We want to and are ready to work with the United States. The world needs such strong nations like the US, but we don't want them constantly getting mixed up in our affairs, instructing us how to live, preventing Europe from building a relationship with us. This is perfectly cogent from the position that Russia is in right now, and I will go on to explain after we finish the nonsense in this article. They say, accused by defeated Democratic contender Hillary Clinton of being a puppet of Putin after praising the Russian leader, Trump has dismissed suggestions he had anything to do with the Russian government during the campaign. That is a fucking stupid thing for Hillary Clinton to accuse him of. Especially given the prevailing narrative of Donald Trump is that he's going to be a strongman Mussolini dictator. He is obviously not going to be the puppet of Putin. In fact, if anything, Putin is probably going to be a puppet of sorts of Trump. Maybe not necessarily because Trump is smart enough to manipulate Putin, but because Putin knows it's in his own fucking best interests to work with fucking Trump. Which is why there were huge celebrations in the Kremlin when Trump won. They knew they weren't going to get war. With Hillary, they knew they were. And they warned us repeatedly beforehand. So, honestly, thank fucking God the American public still has some fucking sense, unlike the media. But then apparently you would get some stupid motherfuckers who would say, apparently 44% of Americans want America to be a puppet state of Russia. You're an idiot. You're an idiot, and there is no value to anything you can possibly say if you think that's going to be the case. You are a fucking moron. So the accusation is, I cannot say that all of them, but quite a few have been staying in touch with Russian representatives. Okay, Hillary, who have you been staying in touch with? Oh, that's right. State sponsors of Islamic terrorism all across the world. And you are complaining that Trump's campaign has been negotiating, or at least on friendly terms, with Russia. You are a fucking lunatic. The idea that you think Russia is the enemy at the moment proves that you are a lunatic. America is terribly ill, wrote Yang Peng, the vice president of a state-run research center in China's The People's Daily, the flagship newspaper of the Communist Party. The election would be remembered as a page of dirt, chaotic and poor performances, and he is unbelievably right. The performance of the Democratic Party has been an absolute disgrace, and demonstrates just how self-serving it had become, which is why the progressives are desperate to take it over and make it serve their ends instead. I mean, I don't agree with them. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate exactly why their ideology is total nonsense if my body of work hasn't already done that. But at least they're doing it for the right reasons. At least they're not doing it because they are selfish, neocon, corrupt fucks. I love this, though. Remember, the title of the article is Donald Trump's Agenda Signals the End of America as a World Superpower, and then they say, it is difficult to predict the specifics of the new administration's policies. How do you know then? How can you justify your stupid fucking headline? You don't know shit. You're telling us this. This is a propaganda article. The vision since then has focused more on isolationism, with military action limited to combating Islamist terrorist groups like ISIS, although he seems to be prepared to leave much of that to Russia and Syria. I just want to point out that's a very cost-effective way of fighting an enemy that doesn't really yield great rewards for defeating. But this is just their surface-level analysis, and I swear to you, by the time this video is done, you're going to be like, holy shit, why did I ever believe anything from these people? He says, the wars he's likely to fight are trade wars, and America is hardly going to spread influence around the world, peering from behind, I assume he means, rather than being, peering from behind tariff walls. Now, I am shocked that anyone would talk about geopolitics and suggest that economic power, and especially the economic might of the United States, isn't a huge fucking factor. And I will show you what I mean, because I have evidence of every single fucking thing I'm going to say, unlike these propagandists who give you nothing. And they end on what is presumably a shout-out to the Project for a New American Century by saying, the presidency of Donald Trump may ensure that the American century, which began at the end of the Second World War, is now over. This is complete nonsense. The United States has Russia and China enrounded by NATO bases, each one a tripwire that will force the Russians and the Chinese into war with the United States, which is something they don't fucking want. And they don't want it because they cannot win. There is simply no chance of either of these powers defeating the United States in a conventional military conflict. At the height of the British Empire, British government policy regarding the Navy operated on something called the two-power standard. That was that they would maintain a navy as powerful as their next two competitors combined, so if these two state actors decided to team up against Britain, Britain already had a fighting chance. And this overwhelming military might was designed to ensure that there was just simply no point fighting Britain, to dissuade conflicts before they even started. The United States has 3.4 million tons of battleship in the oceans. The Russians have only 850,000 tons. The Chinese only have 700,000 tons. If the Russians and the Chinese decided to go to war against the United States still has more than twice as much tonnage in the water that they do. This is overwhelming. This is so much more than Britain would have had. And this isn't even including the United States' fucking allies, who would without a doubt join any war on their side. Britain, France and India have another million tons between them. There is no way Russia and China could win this war. They would have to go nuclear to have even the slightest chance of preserving themselves as sovereign powers, which they would do. It is a damn good thing that Hillary was not elected to be the United States president. But like our independent neocon article writer said, Trump isn't actually a war hawk. He's not interested in a hot war with Russia. The United States is going to be hiding behind its tariffs, as if the United States economy isn't a powerful weapon in its own right. Let's have a look at the sanctions the United States placed on Russia after the annexation of Crimea to see how the Americans can wage and win an economic war. These sanctions, in coordination with American allies, were placed on Russia in July 2014, so we're looking at a time frame of just over 2 years. So there are 3 types of economic sanctions. The first restricts access to Western financial markets and services for designated Russian state-owned enterprises in the banking, energy and defense sectors. The second places an embargo on exports to Russia of designated high-technology oil exploration and production equipment. The third is an embargo on exports to Russia of designated military and dual-use goods. For the Russian economy, sanctions are generally assessed to have helped exacerbate the macroeconomic challenges it was already facing, notably the rapid and pronounced fall in oil prices that started in the last months of 2014. Furthermore, the combined effect of these sanctions and the fall in oil prices caused significant downward pressure on the value of the ruble and increased capital flight. The rich people are leaving Russia. At the same time, sanctions on access to financing forced the Russian state to use part of its foreign exchange services to shore up the sanctioned entities, with draining their reserves. These developments forced the hand of the Central Bank of Russia, which abruptly ceased to defend the value of the ruble and hike interest rates in December of 2014. In response, Russia banned Western food imports, but this had a compounding effect as it led to higher food prices and further inflation. This was in addition to the effect of the fall in value of the ruble, which had already raised the price of imported goods and services in rubles. This is why Vladimir Putin's popularity has taken a dip in recent months. It's not a particularly large dip, and he's still miles more popular in Russia than any Western politician is in the West, and recent data confirms this. Russia is in recession with a GDP growth of minus 2.2% for the first quarter of 2015 as compared to the first quarter of 2014, and recent forecasts suggest a fall in real GDP to the order of 3% to 3.5% for 2015 and growth of around 0 for 2016. We are fucking their economy and we're not lifting a finger. The United States is so powerful that it can set rules that will ruin Russia. That is the level of control over the global financial system that the United States has. Do you fucking understand why when Trump was elected, they were cheering in Moscow? Maybe Trump won't fuck them. Maybe Trump will allow them to have some kind of fucking dignity as a power on the world stage, which, frankly, they deserve. There is no reason the Russians should have to endure this. There is no reason the Russians should have to go through this. There is no reason the Russians shouldn't look out for their immediate interests, like every other nation does, and yet we treat them as if they are surrounding us. We are the villains in the story of how Russia is being treated. So Trump saying, you know what, I'm actually going to take it easy on Russia and relax the thumbscrew somewhat, maybe be a bit more humane to them, is a fucking good thing, because they were pressed up against the wall, and Putin, before the election, was warning of war. He was saying things like, I can't believe you're not more afraid because we are on the verge of war, because of what we're doing to them. And the reason that we are acting like they are the ones who are doing us the wrong is because they are just trying to get out from underneath our thumb. And they have done the right thing in doing so. And before I go on, I can already hear the cries from whiny beta males who are about to start calling me unpatriotic. You fucking unbelievable. So shut your fucking mouth and keep listening. There are plans in place to build a huge fucking gas pipeline through the Middle East. Harvard professor Mitchell A. Orenstein and George Romer wrote last month in Foreign Affairs that Russia currently supplies Europe with a quarter of the gas it uses for heating, cooking, fuel, and other activities. In fact, 80% of the gas that Russian state-controlled company Gazprom produces is sold to Europe, so maintaining this crucial market is very important. But Europe doesn't like being so reliant on Russia for fuel and has been trying to reduce its dependence. It's a move that is supported by the United States, as it would weaken Russian influence over Europe. But this has not gone down well with Russia, which uses its power over gas as political leverage and has a history of cutting off supply to countries during conflict. It has even gone to war in Georgia and Ukraine to disrupt plans to export gas from other parts of the Middle East. This is no different to us placing economic sanctions on Russia when they do things that we don't like. Much of Russia's power comes from established pipelines used to transport gas to Europe cheaply, but other countries are now trying to get around Russia and provide new sources of gas to Europe. Last year, Obama spoke openly about the need for Europe to reduce its reliance on Russian gas following the conflict in Ukraine. The US also wants to use its own natural gas supply, recently developed through fracking, to undercut Russian supply, but it will be years before the US is in a position to ship this overseas. The US is not the only country trying to outmaneuver Russia, and this is where the role of Syria becomes more important. Before the civil war, two competing pipelines were put forward by Qatar and Iran aimed to transport gas to Europe through Syria. Now, I'm sure you're aware, Qatar are Clinton Foundation donors and Iran are Russian allies. So which one do you think the Syrians agreed to? Qatar proposed the plans first, but Assad refused. Iran proposed its own $10 billion pipeline, which unsurprisingly Russia backed and Assad approved. And I wonder why. The plan was signed off in 2012 but delayed because of the Syrian civil war. So this gives you rather more context to Hillary Clinton demanding that Assad be removed from power. Assad is a long-time Russian ally. He is suffering from Islamist revolts in his country that are being actively supported by the United States with the intention of overthrowing Assad. So it is entirely moral for Russia to go in and support their ally. It is the right thing for Russia to do, to not only go in and support their ally, but it's in their own fucking interests to maintain the tiny grip on power and influence that they have left. Because if Russia loses the influence that they have from their gas pipelines, what does Russia have left? This is why Putin is actually a great statesman. Not only has he expanded Russian influence directly beyond her borders, but he has protected his ally not once, but twice from American attempts to overthrow them. In 2013, when chemical weapons were found, who knew where they came from except when the UN investigated? It turns out they came from the fucking rebels, alright? By constantly painting this rosy picture of how the West didn't do nothing, and how Syria and Iran and Russia, they're just the worst, they're so horrible. Look at these human rights abusers. We're making excuses for the fact that not only are we fucking them, but we won't stop. And when we keep fucking them, we tell them it's their own fucking fault. Yes, Trump should go easier on Putin. They are desperate for him to do so. He will be able to get any kind of fucking concessions he wants. All he has to do is show Russia a modicum of respect. That's it. And we can get what we want out of them at, I'm sure, at a fairly good fucking deal. And so I am consistently baffled when a progressive who doesn't ever talk about this sort of thing in any other capacity tells me that Russia are a threat. Woo, Russia, you've got to be scared. You're insane. You don't know what you're talking about. The only scary thing about Russia is forcing them into a position where they feel the only appropriate and sensible action is a nuclear strike. That's it. In all other scenarios, we have them whipped. So why force this to go nuclear? What happens if Putin sustains Assad in Syria and they build a pipeline? Nothing. We are already reliant on the Russians for gas. They will simply have another method of selling us gas. Nothing will have changed if we allow the Russians a bit of dignity. In fact, it is us who would be being magnanimous. We would be kind and humanitarian. We would be doing the right thing. But this is entirely the point. The mainstream media is so far out of touch with reality that it is simply not worth paying attention to anymore. All anyone should go to the mainstream media for are the raw facts of what has happened, and even then, Twitter is superseding that, because now I see an unbelievable amount of reporting that is sourced directly from Twitter. The mainstream media is becoming irrelevant. And it is progressivism that has been co-opted by the ideology of social justice that has done this to them. It has encouraged them to think they can consider themselves to be morally superior to the people they disagree with, and therefore they don't have to listen to the people they disagree with. They think they can pick and choose their own facts, to craft their own narratives, as if this is in any way representative of reality. And now we come to the part that we left in the beginning, where the ideologues, after ignoring everything that's going on and completely misrepresenting everything, but doing it on such a grand scale that Goebbels would be proud, are doubling down on their failures. Reality has demonstrated to them that they are frauds, they are liars, they are failures, they are corrupt, they collude, they are nothing more than propaganda pieces for an ideological position, and they probably don't even know it. I don't think they're even capable of admitting this to themselves. But there are some liberals left in the left who will say things like, Hillary voters owe it to America to stop calling everyone a Nazi and start reading WikiLeaks. And you know exactly what they mean when they say that. Stop being an ideological twat and start looking at the facts. My Facebook newsfeed is somehow still full of people trying to blame Trump's election on a nationwide collusion of Klan members and male supremacists, and on the progressives who refuse to fall in line and support Hillary Clinton. This insane, adamant refusal to confront the reality of what's happening in this country will kill the Democratic Party if it doesn't change drastically. And fuck me, sing it, brother. Fucking preach. If you still believe Donald Trump was elected because of racism, it is because you have remained willfully ignorant of what has been happening in your country. You still believe that Trump's election is indicative of a neo-fascist uprising in America because it is not you who have ventured outside of your self-reinforcing validation loop of fellow Clinton voters and your corporate media echo chamber. If you still, days later, think that Hillary Clinton's loss is the fault of anyone other than Hillary Clinton and her supporters, it's because you haven't been reading WikiLeaks. This is what we've been saying. I've been saying this for years. I've been saying this from the very start and all the way through the election campaign. Finally, after the left has lost, they will listen. I'm not doing it because I hate the left. I'm doing it because this is tough love that we fucking need. This cannot continue. If the Progressive Revolution has any hope of mounting a meaningful counteroffensive at any time in the future, the people who supported Hillary Clinton need to stop calling everyone a Nazi long enough to do some actual research into the facts and behind where they went wrong in 2016. Humble themselves and admit they have been completely wrong about everything, because they fucking have. But I'm going to do a video tomorrow that will demonstrate and explain in concise terms exactly why progressivism is the reason this has happened and why it has to go. You have to leave your ideology behind you. It has failed to give you an accurate model of reality, therefore the ideology itself is inadequate. You have to discard it. Just so we're clear, Democrats don't get to blame the WikiLeaks documents on a subversive Kremlin conspiracy anymore. Julian Assange has confirmed he didn't receive the documents from Russia. There will be no more echo chamber red baiting now that we'll be getting a president who has no interest in a conflict with Russia. And the concocted blame Putin for everything shtick has already faded into obsolescence now that it has no more place or relevance. What a fucking amazing analysis this person is giving. This is just fabulous. This is right on the money. You have to listen, but they have to understand the ideology is what led them here. This is the sort of ideology that leads people to become serial and perpetual liars. Unless, of course, you think there's a rash of woke 8-year-olds giving insightful political and social commentary all of a sudden. Total horseshit. Total. It's amazing. You have Christopher Hitchens' old publication Vanity Fair printing, "Read the letter Aaron Sorkin wrote to his daughter after Donald Trump was elected president." Let's have a quick look, shall we? I'll let you imagine the sad piano music in the background this time. Well, the world changed last night in a way I couldn't protect us from. That's a terrible feeling for a father. This guy's a fucking movie maker, by the way. It's hardly the first time my candidate didn't win, but it's the first time that a thoroughly incompetent pig with dangerous ideas and a serious psychiatric disorder, no knowledge of the world, no curiosity to learn has. And it wasn't just Donald Trump who won last night. Okay, let's see how this is ending. The battle isn't over, it's just begun. Grandpa fought in World War II. When he came home, this country handed him an opportunity to make life great for family. I will not hand his great-granddaughter a country shaped by hateful and stupid men. Your tears last night woke me up and I'll never go to sleep on you again. You are comparing this to World War II! You are unbelievable! Just, what a lunatic! Why is Vanity Fair publishing this? Hitchens would fucking vomit at this nonsense! Let's hear from Lena Dunham on this issue, given that her media presence is fucking huge for some reason. Don't agonise, organise. A message from Lena about the presidential election and where we go from here. I mean, she was a Clinton surrogate, so why the fuck not? Let's hear it. I woke up on election day like a bride, rosy, thrilled, a little controlling about just how my perfect day would be spent. After working on the Clinton campaign for 18 months, I was ready to celebrate, and sure that by nightfall I'd be knocking back glasses of champagne and creating a story to tell my unborn children. Those poor fucking kids. Maybe I'd even get close enough to Hillary Clinton to hug her and to whisper thank you. I'd dreamed about it every night for the last 2 weeks. So on Tuesday, Jesus, it's almost embarrassing to remember, I smugly selected a baby blue sweater with a not-so-subtle pussy motif. Fucking... and headed to vote with my boyfriend, smiling at the elderly socialists on my block like it was Sesame Street. I packed HLC 2016 memorabilia into a brown box with my I voted sticker smacked on top. I spent the afternoon phone banking with friends, and it felt more like icing on the cake than urgent business, because as horrifying as I found Donald Trump's rhetoric, as hideous as I found his racism and xenophobia, as threatening to basic decency as I found his demagogue persona, I never truly believed that he could win. Because you lived in a fucking fantasy world. An ideological bubble that you thought you had total control over and gave you total control over the world, and reality just simply didn't conform. The 3 hours I spent at the Javits Center Tuesday night, surrounded by campaign staffers and fellow surrogates for Hillary Clinton, are blurred and spotty. At a certain point it became clear that something had gone horribly wrong. Celebrants' faces turned. The modelling had been incorrect. Watching the numbers in Florida, I touched my face and realised I was crying. "Can we go home now, please?" I said to my boyfriend. I could tell he was having trouble breathing, and he could make my chin, and I could feel my chin breaking into hives. Another woman showed me her matching hive, hidden by fresh concealer. Oh my god, hives on her face! How tragic! I hugged women I had spent 18 months with, laughing and plotting and spreading our love for Hillary Clinton and her message. Fucking what? What fucking message? My party dress felt tight and itchy. Yeah, I bet it did. By the time we made it over the bridge, a friend called. It's over, she said. I love you. I was frozen. We stopped at dinner. No one was speaking as they ate. No one in the whole place. As I got home into the shower and began to cry even harder, my boyfriend, who had already wept, watched me as I mumbled incoherently, clutching myself. It wasn't supposed to go this way. It was supposed to be her job. She worked her whole life for the job. It's her job. All the way through this article, it's punctuated by quotes like this. In a society in which equality is a fact, not merely a word, words of racial and sexual assault and humiliation will be nonsense syllables. Yes, this kind of Orwellian claptrap is what they want. An Orwellian future where certain words just don't have meanings anymore. The ideology has overtaken everything. Can you imagine anything this scary? And can you imagine thinking that you're genuinely going to arrive at this future? You fucking lunatics. You are absolutely wrong on everything. Dead fucking wrong. On every single thing. You are the Don Quixotes of the left. You have bought into your own bullshit for such a long time that everywhere there are windmills you are seeing enemies and you're attacking everything because you just don't see reality. I could stop here and I think I'll have made my point, but you know what, I'm going to keep going because I don't give a shit how red raw your assholes are. I want you to feel every fucking inch. So let's carry on talking about how you are just liars. Progressives are just liars. You do nothing but lie constantly. And so when you say things like, countless acts of hate have been carried out since Trump's win, I can only imagine that you're the ones perpetuating them. Because you seem like the type. You absolutely seem like the types. You've got every reason, you've got every motivation, and I know that you think, well, I mean, even if this isn't necessarily true, it's going to have happened somewhere, so it's just bringing awareness to the problem. Because I've seen you fucking say it before. Seriously, listen to this crap and ask yourself if you think people outside of your echo chamber believe you. Not even 24 hours yet, my friend's sister, who is a Muslim, had a knife pulled on her by a Trump supporter while on the bus by campus. 28,000 retweets. That didn't happen, did it? That didn't happen. That's bollocks. That didn't happen. You've made that up because it supports what you want to be supported. But I know you've made it up, and you know you've made it up. You're full of shit. My friend was in a grocery store with a hijab on, and a woman came up to her and said, "You can't wear this anymore or we'll hang you from it." That's horrific! Honestly, I can't even understand. Yeah, I can't even believe, actually. I think that's bollocks. I think it's total horseshit. You may as well be telling me that an 8-year-old is delivering incisive political commentary, because this is bollocks. And unsurprisingly, it comes out that it's bollocks. The police say no, there was no report of that, and the woman has rescinded her story. That 28,000 fucking retweet one, total horseshit. You're all full of shit, constantly. You are pathological liars. You're always doing it. Like Amy Schumer, of course. Amy Schumer says the internet will judge you if you don't vote. And they goddamn will. Colin Kaepernick didn't vote. Urgh, he stands for no one. Of course, this excludes Lena Dunham, who, for example, when she lies about voting in the primaries, and a Vice reporter just looks it up, is she registered? She's not even fucking registered to vote for the Democratic Party, so she couldn't have voted in the primary, so she must have lied. He gets fired for this. He tweeted out, "Sadly, Vice has severed its relationship with me for reporting that multi-millionaire Clinton surrogate Lena Dunham deceived the public." Of course, the narrative gets spun and they say, no, you got fired for doxing Lena. Except he says, to those who hilariously claim this is doxing, Dunham's address was widely reported after she bought her $4.8 million Brooklyn property. Yes, you are full of shit. He can demonstrate you're full of shit. We all know you're full of shit. We know you're liars. You're constant liars. And I tell you what, Michael Tracy's Twitter timeline has been just a thing of beauty. When he has been going on the fucking warpath against the people who got him fired, just ripping and shredding everything they say. He has just been demolishing in one sentence every progressive narrative that's crossed his path, because he knows they're liars. But let's keep this going. Do you remember when Donald Trump said that he wouldn't just outright accept the results of the election because, frankly, Hillary isn't a trustworthy candidate? It's entirely likely that she will try to rig the elections. She didn't, or at least she didn't manage it because Trump won. But once again, the Hillary-supporting progressives pitched a fucking fit. Donald Trump doesn't respect democracy. Donald Trump's going to undermine democracy. Oh, it's the end of the republic. Oh, really? How are your protests going exactly? Is this you not accepting the results of the election or something? I mean, this is how the system works. I mean, I'm sorry that the Electoral College just isn't in your favour this time, but you weren't complaining last time, and if you'd won, you wouldn't be complaining about the Electoral College. Especially if it had been Trump winning the popular votes, but Hillary winning the college. You wouldn't fucking raise your voices, you wouldn't raise a finger, you'd be arguing against it. Shut your fucking mouths. Especially, and these fucking petitions. Oh, this is again you accepting the decision of the vote, just like you complained Donald Trump wouldn't, isn't it? 4 million idiots who literally don't care about your democratic process. 4 million of them. Oh, but no. It's voting for Donald Trump that has made the republic end. That's brought the end. It's not 4 million anti-democratic advocates. I mean, why do you think you're signing a petition to overthrow the referendum result? That was what the voting was, you morons. That's what your system was for, to petition the government from the people to put a new government into power that represents the will of the people, as your system says this is how it's done. That is what you've done already. Signing a petition, and after Hillary has already conceded, is fucking stupid and just makes it look like you are fucking hypocrites, because you appear to be. When I say you have failed, it is because of your ideology. It has failed to represent reality to you. It has failed to give you the necessary skills in order to persuade others. It has turned you into terrible people, pathological liars and hypocrites who are despised so roundly that people will vote for Donald Trump over you. People weren't voting for Trump. They were voting against you, and you must understand that by now. Or at least you'd think. But like I said, there has been a manifest and categoric failure of progressivism in every sphere that it has operated in. Right down to the very raison d'etre of the ideology. The very core of it. The thing it purports to stand for. Women have rejected your ideology. You have failed them. More than half of white women voted for Trump over Clinton. Your identity politics is bullshit. It doesn't work. It doesn't represent women or minorities or anything that you think it represents. It only represents a small, twisted, depraved cabal of lying, hypocritical pieces of shit. Do you understand? That is what everyone else outside of your echo chamber thinks of you. And the overwhelming response from the progressive establishment is to declare the people who don't vote for you and yet you claim to represent as traitors to their gender and race and sexuality and all of the other categories you give a fuck about. For example, putting out an article called "Dear Fellow White Women, We Fucked This Up" just goes to show how out of touch you are. Most white women don't agree with you. They wanted the diametric opposite of what you wanted. They are not a class, you do not represent them, they do not owe you anything, your ideology is broken. And when the evidence is presented to you, you can't accept it. You have to place the blame on other people. Fellow white women, I am done with you. After all this talk of allyship, you didn't show up to the polls to push back against the openly racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, now President-elect Donald Trump. Exit polls from November 8th elections show that 53% of white women voted for Trump compared to only 43% for Clinton. It appears that many white women are not moved by Trump's sexism and would instead rather applaud the candidate for his lack of political correctness. Possibly because they don't consider him to be a giant fucking sexist. You can't see what they see. You have blinders on. After all the supposed progress we've made, painstakingly trying to change a white feminist movement into an intersectional one as if all of the women voting for Trump are feminists. They're not. They're not feminists. They're in fact opposed to you, you morons. You absolute lunatics. White women didn't show up to fight back against a man whose rhetoric and policies directly attack women of colour, immigrant women, Muslim women, LGBTQ women, and more. We'll get to those people shortly, because most people aren't simply the categories they fall into. They owe you nothing and they knew it. You didn't know it. To quote one of my favourite lines from Roxane Gay's Bad Feminist, and yet. Brilliant. Fucking insightful, that. And yet you still didn't show up to the polls to elect our first woman president, because they didn't care about that. A white lady no less. They didn't care about race. When the demographic split for the exit polls came out showing the divide between Trump and Clinton supporters, my eyes immediately jumped to one group, white women. Yes, because you're a fucking ideologue. Tell me we came through for our sisters of colour, I begged. At least this one time, we didn't. You know what? More white people voted for Obama than for Trump. Just so you know. Just so you know. Those fucking racists. I am ashamed. I am ashamed of my country. I'm ashamed of white people, but more than anyone else, I'm ashamed of white women. Because I am a giant collectivist cretin who has no idea what the fuck is going on. Is this who we really are? Clearly, and it is who we always have been. There is no we. There is just millions of individuals making their own political choices and voting as they choose. Not based on some mythical gender club in your head. This is the problem with collectivism. It warps your thinking. But this is it. This is the apex of everything we have been building to. So take a good long look in the mirror this morning, and instead of blaming others for this nightmare we have woken up to, no, we've chosen, make an active choice today. The buck stops with you. White women as a demographic. She doesn't even realise that she's placing the blame on others. I don't even think she can conceive of the fact that she is placing the blame on others when she says it's other white women. Because she is such a dyed-in-the-wool collectivist, she doesn't seem to understand any of this. None of these people do. Even when their manifest failures are staring them in the face, they cannot accept reality. In the 80s, a Soviet defector called Yuri Bezmenov defected to the United States and went on a TV show and described the process of ideological subversion. And until this point, I had resisted using this information. I had resisted using the information he gives in his talk because I didn't exactly have the right proof to demonstrate it. But now we do. Listen to this. If there are any social justice warriors watching this by any miracle who are still not sure, this is him describing you.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid of society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place, and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be the greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism.